What happens when the machine that replaces you doesn't actually know how to do your job? That's the question I couldn't stop asking myself the day I was let go. Not out of bitterness, at least not at first, but out of genuine curiosity. Because if you'd seen what I saw that morning, sitting across from a 29-year-old executive wearing designer glasses and repeating phrases he clearly didn't understand, you'd ask the same thing. My name is Caleb Morgan. I'm 44 years old, a single father of one, and until 2 months ago I was head of supply chain operations at Holloway Distribution in Milwaukee. 15 years. That's how long I spent building systems from the ground up, navigating everything, from record-breaking snowstorms to labor shortages to international shipment delays during a global pandemic. I wasn't perfect, but I was the guy people called when things went sideways, which is probably why the calm tone in that HR office felt so surreal. "We're moving in a new direction," said Simon Keating, VP of Strategy and self-appointed tech evangelist. OmniRoad gives us 24/7 optimization with 13% efficiency gains and full integration with warehouse robotics. It's the future. Your role is no longer aligned with that future. He smiled when he said that, like he was offering me an opportunity, not a severance envelope. "Your experience is no longer scalable," he added, as if I were an outdated operating system. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I nodded, thanked them for the opportunity, and agreed to train the incoming junior analyst, a fresh-faced college grad named Chase who'd never set foot in a warehouse before this month. His job, apparently, was to monitor dashboards and escalate anomalies flagged by the system. It took me half a second to realize he didn't even know what that meant. As I packed up my things later that day, photos of my daughter Maya, a worn leather notebook of hand-drawn route maps, a folder marked client quirks. No one said much. A few uneasy handshakes. One or two will miss-yous that even they didn't believe. I walked past the new operations war room on my way out. Through the glass, I saw the tech team celebrating a successful AI pilot launch. Funny thing, though, in all their excitement, no one asked who Murphy Medical calls when their oxygen shipments get delayed during a highway closure, or how to handle fresh produce deliveries when temperatures drop below freezing at 2 a.m. Apparently, OmniRoute would figure it out. But a small part of me already knew it wouldn't. I didn't go straight home after they fired me. I got in my car, turned off my phone, and just drove. Not anywhere in particular. Just down old service routes, past warehouse lots I hadn't visited in years. Past the second depot we built in 2013 when demand outgrew our original facility. I passed loading docks where drivers used to call me in the middle of the night with busted axles or refrigeration failures. The roads were quiet, but my thoughts weren't. I kept thinking, how did we get here? 15 years ago, Holloway Distribution was barely a name. Just 8 trucks, a few local clients, and an owner who still handled deliveries when we were short-staffed. I joined right after the 2008 recession, when most companies were downsizing and Holloway was trying to scale. I didn't have much formal training in logistics back then, just Army experience and a knack for fixing broken systems. I could look at a route, a team roster, a schedule, and tell you what would go wrong before it did. The founder, Janice Holloway, saw something in me. She once told me, "We move more than freight, Caleb. We move trust. And trust doesn't run on numbers, it runs on people." I built everything around that idea. Over time, I created routing plans for temperature-sensitive goods, personalized delivery windows for hospitals and elderly care centers, and fallback procedures for when things inevitably fell apart: blizzards, floods, road closures, driver, emergencies. I didn't just run logistics, I anticipated failure and designed resilience. Some of the clients still remember those moments, like the time our systems went down during a December outage and I manually routed 15 trucks over the phone while watching weather updates on a battery-powered radio, or when I personally drove a shipment of oxygen tanks across state lines. Overnight, because the scheduled carrier hit black ice, those weren't hero moments to me. They were just part of the job. That kind of knowledge lives in your skin, not in a spreadsheet. But all that started to change when Janice retired 5 years ago and handed the company to her daughter, Alyssa. She was smart, ambitious, and believed in metrics more than memory. She'd come from a tech accelerator background. Startups, pitch decks, TED Talks about disruption. I didn't dislike her, but I didn't trust her instincts either. She brought in a consulting firm from San Francisco to modernize operations, and I became something of a living relic. I was polite at first, tried to bridge the old school know-how with the new school systems. But I saw the signs. My reports were rerouted to her assistant. My input was no longer needed in strategic meetings, and junior staff began referring to my practices as legacy operations. Then came OmniRoute, the AI-driven logistics platform that promised faster, smarter, more cost-effective routing. It didn't need intuition, it just needed data. I still remember the meeting when they first announced it, a room full of smiles, analytics dashboards glowing on screens, words like efficiency scaling and predictive learning thrown around like magic. I raised one concern about how the software would handle undocumented route exceptions, like when Highway 12 floods during thaw season, or how the system would know to call ahead if a hospital's receiving dock had staffing shortages. Alyssa smiled like I was a child asking why the sky is blue. "It'll learn over time," she said, "except clients don't wait for software to learn." At home, my daughter Maya could sense the shift. I didn't talk about it, but she saw it in how late I stayed up, how quiet I'd become. She was 16, obsessed with photography, and had this habit of leaving notes around the house, quotes, ideas, messages that she thought might help. One day, I found a sticky note inside my glove box. "Don't confuse comfort with purpose." I stared at it for a long time before driving to work. Still, I stayed. Because I believed I could adapt. Because I thought my value would outlive the systems being brought in to replace me. Because no matter how many dashboards or algorithms they installed, someone still had to understand the heartbeat of the operation. The drivers still trusted me. The old clients still called me when their needs didn't fit into neat boxes. Even when I was no longer allowed to make final decisions, people came to me for advice. I thought that counted for something. I thought it meant something, but it didn't. When Simon Keating read from his script that morning, telling me I'd served the company well but the model had evolved, I realized I had been waiting for a kind of loyalty that no longer existed. They gave me 2 weeks severance per year, a generic reference letter, and a courtesy offer to train my replacement. They called it a transition opportunity. And so I packed my office slowly, carefully, but I left with one thing they didn't know about. A plain manila folder I had kept since my 5th year. Inside it were route maps I'd drawn by hand, delivery protocols I'd written for medical clients with vulnerable patients, notes about every client's preferred time windows, loading dock idiosyncrasies, even who liked to be called by name. None of it was secret, but none of it was stored anywhere else. It didn't belong to Holloway's system. It belonged to me. The weekend after I left Holloway, I found myself waking up before dawn, just like always. My body hadn't yet caught on that it wasn't needed at 5:15 a.m. anymore. The silence of the house was unfamiliar. No emails, no dispatch calls, no urgent texts asking for a workaround on a failed delivery. Just me, the dark, and the steady hum of the coffee pot. I sat at the kitchen table, with that manila folder in front of me. I hadn't opened it since I brought it home. I wasn't even sure why I had grabbed it in the first place, maybe habit, maybe instinct. But there it was, a small archive of human memory in a world that had decided memory wasn't valuable. Out of idle curiosity, or maybe denial, I started comparing the contents to public data. I pulled up Holloway's shipment logs from clients who reported delivery irregularities. I had a few friends still inside, people who weren't thrilled about the changes either. And that's when I noticed something strange. Murphy Medical, one of our long-standing accounts, had reported 3 delayed oxygen shipments in just 9 days. Cold Point Grocers had rerouted 2 refrigerated deliveries due to timing conflicts, and the community health clinic in Sheboygan, which relied on early morning medication shipments, had just missed their 3rd consecutive delivery window. It was subtle, but it was real. OmniRoute wasn't optimizing, it was guessing. And guessing wrong. I didn't say anything publicly. I wasn't trying to start a war, but I did make a call. Jonas Delaney had once been my operations assistant back in the day before he left to start his own company, Delaney Freight, Cumberland, 2 counties south. We hadn't spoken in almost a year, but when he picked up, his voice was warm, surprised. Caleb? Wow. Long time, everything okay? Not really, I said. But I think I'm ready to work again. We met for coffee the next morning. Jonas looked exactly the same. Messy hair, sleeves rolled up, always half a cup deep into something new. He didn't ask for gossip or drama. He just said, I've got roots that need fixing, clients that need trust. You're the guy who used to solve those problems before they became problems. You want to consult? I did. That same afternoon, I opened my laptop, pulled up my route optimization templates, and started rebuilding. Not copying anything proprietary, just drawing from what I knew. I created alternate routing plans for food banks and medical suppliers, built driver contingency maps based on road conditions and seasonal hazards, and restructured Delaney's late load response procedures to account for things most systems overlook, like union-mandated driver breaks that don't always align. With GPS logic, word travels fast in this business. Within 2 weeks, we'd landed a small but critical contract from City Health Services, one of Holloway's clients. Nothing major, but enough to get noticed. Enough to raise eyebrows. That's when Elaine, the dispatcher who used to work under me at Holloway, messaged me privately. They're scrambling, Caleb. Routes keep failing. Chase quit. Said he couldn't sleep. Said the software kept telling him things that made no sense, and when he asked for help, Simon told him to trust the process. I didn't reply right away. Not because I didn't care, but because I did. Chase was never the problem. He was a kid thrown into the fire without the tools to fight it. And now the fire was spreading. I kept tracking the failures. Quietly. Systematically. Clients missing deliveries. Drivers stuck without override. Permissions. Cold storage loads going unmonitored. It was all happening in the background while the executives at Holloway kept pushing out press releases about innovation and digital transformation. One evening, I sat with Maya at the kitchen table while she edited photos on her laptop, and I updated route status logs. You're building something again, she said without looking up. I guess I am. She closed her laptop. You know they're going to call you, right? I smiled. We'll see. They didn't take long. 10 days later, I got an email from Simon Keating. Hope you're doing well. We're having some implementation issues with OmniRoad and would like to explore a short-term consulting engagement to stabilize a few accounts. No apology, no humility, just corporate language wrapped around desperation. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I waited until Jonas, and I secured a second contract. This time with North Prairie Organics, a client I used to manage personally. They reached out to Delaney after Holloway sent a shipment of produce through a high-emission corridor, which contaminated their stock. It was a mistake OmniRoute had made 3 times before Holloway even noticed. That night, as I updated our logistics flowchart, I received another message, this time from Alyssa herself, more personal, more direct. Caleb, I think we made a mistake. Would you be open to a meeting? I stared at the screen for a while before typing, let's talk. But not at Holloway. We met at a diner just outside the city. Alyssa looked tired, older than I remembered, her confidence replaced with uncertainty. We need your help, she said. I leaned back, measured my words. You replaced experience with code. Code doesn't call ahead when docs freeze over. It doesn't know which warehouse manager is off on Tuesdays. That's what you lost. Not just me, but all of that. I know, she said quietly. But I wasn't interested in going back. I'd already started something better. Something built not on arrogance, but on understanding. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't chasing relevance. I was creating it. The man they let go was gone, but the one who replaced him, he had a plan. After that meeting at the diner, I didn't hear from Alyssa for a while. I assumed she had gone back to her team with my words and tried to spin them into a recovery plan. Maybe she believed she could salvage what was left. Maybe she thought they could patch over the cracks with some new consultant or by tweaking the OmniRoute code. to simulate judgment it would never truly have. But a week later I got another message, this time not from Holloway but from one of their oldest clients. William Hayes, the regional director for Murphy Medical, called my office directly at Delaney Freight. "Caleb, it's getting bad," he said without pleasantries. "We've had 3 more delayed shipments and the last one almost shut down our ICU for the night. We tried escalating it. No one answers. They just keep telling us it's being addressed algorithmically." "Have you considered switching providers?" I asked. He hesitated, then said what I'd been waiting to hear. "We're ready, but we want you." That same day, Jonas and I brought the Delaney team into emergency planning mode. We restructured routing for Murphy overnight, assigned our most reliable refrigerated trucks to their oxygen and medication contracts, and I personally coordinated with their facilities team to ensure timing and access compliance. Within 72 hours, their supply line was fully stable again. It didn't stop there. Over the next 2 weeks, 3 more clients jumped ship from Holloway, Cold Point Grocers, North Prairie Organics, and a regional branch of City Health Services. Each time they came directly to Delaney. Each time they asked for me by name. Meanwhile, inside Holloway, chaos was mounting. Elaine, still in dispatch over there, messaged me again, this time late at night. "They've pulled the plug on OmniRoute. For perishable goods," she wrote. "Too many errors. We lost a contract with the school district over spoiled milk shipments." Chase, the junior analyst I had trained, had officially resigned, burned out, overwhelmed, and blaming himself for things that were never his fault. Simon was now managing logistics directly and, according to Elaine, was drowning in tasks he doesn't understand. A week later, Alyssa called again. This time she didn't ask to meet. She just said, "Please, Caleb, we need help." I agreed to one final conversation, this time on my terms at Delaney HQ. She arrived looking like a shadow of the confident executive I once knew. With her was Simon and one of their legal reps. Jonas and I sat across from them in our modest but functional boardroom, surrounded by whiteboards filled with route diagrams and contingency schedules. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. "We'd like to formally offer a consulting contract," Alyssa said. "Short-term, high compensation. We're hoping you can document the special conditions and client-specific logistics that OmniRoute failed to replicate. In other words, they wanted me to download 15 years of institutional memory so their system could pretend to be human." I glanced at Jonas. He gave me a quiet nod. I turned back to Alyssa. "You had that knowledge already," I said. "But you decided it was expendable, that I was expendable, and now, after burning it down, you want to lease it back." "We made a mistake," Alyssa admitted. Simon cleared his throat. "We're prepared to offer $20,000 for a 2-week engagement." I let the silence hang. Then I said, "No." Alyssa blinked. "Excuse me? I'm not going to sell you the ghost of what I used to give you for free. You had it. You ignored it. And now, I'm building something better." Simon shifted in his seat. "You're already working with our former clients. That's a conflict of interest." "No," I said calmly. "They came to me because I understand their needs in ways your systems never will." "Are you poaching?" "I don't need to. Your software is doing all the damage for me." They left shortly after, the offer withdrawn, but the message was clear. They were running out of time. Over the next month, Holloway's collapse accelerated. Internal staff leaked that the company had lost close to 40% of their on-time deliveries. Regulatory violations were piling up. They attempted to hire a team of outside consultants to fix the OmniRoute integration, at triple the cost it had originally saved them. Investors began pulling out. Morale cratered. Then came the real blow. Murphy Medical publicly announced the year termination of their contract with Holloway, citing persistent service failures and loss of operational trust. Within hours, media outlets picked up the story. That's when everything started unraveling. Elaine called me again. She was crying. "They laid off another 30 people this morning. I'm still here, for now. But it feels like watching a ship sink and not being allowed to swim." "You don't belong on that ship anymore," I told her. "We don't all have a lifeboat like you." I paused, then said, "Maybe you do. We're hiring." Come by next week. Over the next 2 weeks, I brought in 3 former Holloway employees, Elaine, a veteran route planner, and one of the warehouse managers. They didn't need training, they needed trust, and we gave it to them. Jonas and I knew we had something real now. Something built not on arrogance or automation, but on insight and resilience. By the end of the quarter, we had absorbed 7 of Holloway's former contracts. Our on-time delivery rate was 98%. Our customer satisfaction index was the highest in the region. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was building something with meaning again. Then one afternoon, as I was reviewing dock flow schedules, the receptionist buzzed me. "There's a visitor asking for you. Says his name is Simon Keating." I hesitated, then nodded. "Send him in." He entered with a forced smile and tired eyes. "Caleb," he said, "we're filing for bankruptcy." Chapter 11. Alyssa's stepping down. I'm trying to hold things together, but it's falling apart. I waited. "We're open to acquisition. Equipment, accounts, assets. If Delaney wants to make an offer." He trailed off. I looked at Jonas, who was standing just behind him. "We'll consider it," I said. "If only to make sure your people don't lose everything because of your choices." He nodded and left without another word. As the door closed behind him, I looked at the whiteboard across the room, filled with hand-drawn lines, notes in red marker, updates in green. Not digital, not automated, human. That was the difference. That's what they had forgotten, and that's what would keep us standing when the rest fell away. The acquisition process moved faster than I expected. Within 6 weeks, Delaney Freight officially absorbed Holloway Distribution's remaining assets. Their last surviving contracts, a handful of refrigerated trucks and 2 warehouse leases, came under our control. It wasn't about expanding aggressively. It was about preserving the relationships and resources that still had value. We weren't buying a brand. We were salvaging what was left of something that used to stand for trust. The irony wasn't lost on me. 1 year ago, I had walked out of Holloway's headquarters with a cardboard box in my hands, silently dismissed by a system that claimed my knowledge was obsolete. Now I stood in that same building, newly rebranded under the Delaney name, overseeing the integration of both teams and rebuilding an operation rooted not in algorithms, but in judgment. I didn't gloat. There were no victory speeches, no petty revenge. Because the truth is, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt focused. There was still work to do, clients to reassure, employees to stabilize. Vindication is quiet when it's real. It doesn't need a spotlight. I created a transitional task force to retrain former Holloway staff and integrate them into our systems. Elaine led a new dispatch team. The warehouse manager we'd brought over, Luis, was promoted to head of operations for the Midwest corridor. I didn't care what logo they used to work under. What mattered was that they understood the heartbeat of the job. Meanwhile, Jonas and I invested in refining our hybrid logistics model. We used tech, but only as a tool. Our system included human checkpoints at every critical phase: routing, packaging, temperature control, emergency override. It wasn't flashy, but it worked, and clients noticed. Cold Point Grocers doubled their volume with us. Murphy Medical added 2 new facilities to our distribution list. City Health restructured their entire supply chain under our guidance. One afternoon, while reviewing scheduling protocols, I looked out the window of my office, an office that used to belong to Simon Keating. The irony made me smile, but only for a moment. The view overlooked the loading docks where forklifts moved in a rhythm that felt familiar. No chaos, no delays, just precision. That evening, as I was heading out, I saw a familiar figure waiting by my truck in the parking lot. Alyssa. She looked different, less polished, more human. "I heard about the acquisition," she said quietly. Nodded. "It's done." "I wanted to see it for myself," she said, glancing at the building. "I didn't think you'd take it. I thought you'd want to leave it in the past." "I considered it," I said. "But the people who worked here didn't deserve to go down with a failed idea. They deserved better." She nodded slowly. It wasn't just the software. It was me. I thought progress meant leaving the old behind. It's easy to believe that when the numbers make promises they can't keep. A pause passed between us. Do you hate me? She asked. No, I said truthfully. I just think you forgot that people like me aren't barriers to innovation. We're the reason things work in the first place. She offered a small smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Well, you built something stronger than what I destroyed. I'll give you that. I didn't answer. She left without asking for anything. That was the part I respected most. She didn't ask for a second chance, just acknowledgement. 2 months later, I received a call from William Hayes at Murphy Medical. Everything's running like clockwork, he said. But here's the interesting part. We're getting compliments from staff, nurses, doc crews, saying deliveries feel more human again. That's the goal, I said. He paused. I know you don't want the spotlight, Caleb, but people are noticing. We're putting you in for a Regional Logistics Excellence Award. You earned it. I thanked him and hung up, more moved than I expected to be. Not because of the award, but because people were feeling the difference. It wasn't about beating Holloway. It was about proving that what they threw away wasn't obsolete. It was essential. We didn't just win back contracts. We restored trust. Jonas and I eventually sat down to reflect. We were still running lean, still scaling carefully. But the company had changed. Our model was now studied by trade groups. Other firms asked us for training sessions. We hosted seminars, titled Human-Centric Logistics in the Age of Automation. The message was simple. Data is powerful, but wisdom is irreplaceable. At home, Maya noticed too. You're different, Dad, she said one night over dinner. You seem lighter. I smiled. I think I am. She looked at me for a moment and said, It's kind of funny, huh? They tried to erase you with a piece of software and now they don't even exist. I didn't say anything, but I thought about it long after. They had tried to replace me. Instead, they proved how irreplaceable I was. And that, more than anything, was justice. There's a strange clarity that comes when you're on the other side, of being discarded. For a long time, I thought what I'd lost at Holloway was a job, a title, maybe a sense of pride. But looking back now, I realize what I'd really lost was the illusion that loyalty alone protects you, that experience always wins, that common sense will prevail over code. It doesn't, not always. The truth is, we're living in a time where companies are chasing automation faster than they understand its limits. Efficiency has become the gospel, and anything that slows the machine, be it a seasoned employee with nuanced insight or a client with unpredictable needs, is labeled friction. And friction, they believe, must be removed. But what they're forgetting is this. Logistics is not just about getting things from point A to point B. It's about knowing why point A matters to point B. It's about understanding that a 2 a.m. delivery isn't just a data point. It's a nurse waiting for oxygen tanks before her shift ends, or a produce manager depending on freshness to feed a community. It's about relationships, instinct, judgment. The things software can't simulate no matter how smart it claims to be. The future isn't man or machine, it's man with machine. Technology should support human intelligence, not try to replace it. Because when the system breaks, it's still people who pick up the pieces. And if you're someone out there wondering whether your experience still matters in a world rushing to automate everything, let me be clear. It does. Maybe more than ever. One viewer left a comment under our story that stuck with me. We're not against progress. We're against being forgotten in the process. That's it. That's the tension. And that's the balance we need to get right. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about remembering the value of human work, of what happens when you don't just adapt to change, but lead it on your own terms. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you think of someone whose quiet expertise was once taken for granted, share this video with them. Or better, yet share your own story in the comments. What's the one thing you know that no system can ever replace? Because those stories matter, just like you do.